What's up, guys? You probably clicked on this video because, like me, you want to have a clean car. Well, in today's video, we are going to take the wash process back to the basics, and we're going to break this down in a 5-step process to make it simple and easy for you to follow along at home. So without further ado, let's get started. So before we jump into the wash, the very first thing that I like to do is I like to look at the car. The car behind us is fairly new and it is driven by a college student. That's something to note because this car sees a lot of campus parking lots and commutes throughout the year. And one of the things to note on this car is that it has a lot of dirt and grime on the lower rocker panels as well as the rear quarter panels. So those are areas that we are going to want to address in today's wash specifically. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the steps and products that we're going to use in today's video. So in front of me, I have an assortment of products, and I'm going to break this down into 5 simple steps to make this all very easy to follow. So step 1, we're going to focus on our wheels and tires. So we have a dedicated wheel and a dedicated tire cleaner, along with some brushes, as well as a mitt. Then after that step is complete, we're going to jump into our all-purpose cleaner. So as I mentioned before, the lower rockers as well as the rear quarter panel are extremely dirty. We're going to spray this, let it sit and dwell, rinse it off. After this step is complete, we move into step 3. We're going to foam this vehicle using GSF as well as an Ultra mitt. This is going to be used for our contact wash specifically to really get the paint surfaces clean. Then finally, when this step is done, we move into step 4, where we add protection to the vehicle surface. Once this step is complete, we then transition to our final step, which is the drying step. Without further ado, let's get started on step 1, wheels and tires. It's a pretty simple job, but there is a little bit to it. So with that said, the brushes we're using today, this is the Detail Factory tire brush. Now, this is a more stiff bristled brush specifically to combat blooming, meaning whenever your tires kind of have that brown haze, we're going to use this in conjunction with the tire cleaner to get the blooming down and get your tire looking fresh again. Now for the wheels, I like to use the barrel brush, the mini barrel brush specifically. And this is a pretty cool brush because it does have a couple of different sleeve options. We're using kind of the Ultra sleeve option. Now the other brush is the Detail Factory Tri-Grip soft bristle brush. This is a synthetic bristle that I like to use specifically for the lugs. Again, this wheel doesn't have the lugs per se to clean, but even these tight cornered areas I can utilize with this brush. So this brush is a handy brush that I can use in those, as well as areas such as the grille or badges on the vehicle's paint surfaces. These bristles are safe on those areas as well. And finally, I love this one. This is the Ultra Wheel Mitt by the Rag Company. Now, one thing I want to note about all these brushes, they are safe on your wheels, specifically the wheel brushes. The tire brush, make sure this doesn't touch the wheel face, but the rest of the brushes, phenomenal when it comes to safely cleaning your wheels. Now for our chemicals, we are going with ADS Tire Cleaner. It is going to actually pull out a lot of the blooming from your tires, making it easier and resetting those tires back to, well, factory new. So tire cleaner by ADS. And our second chemical is Koshemi Magic Wheel Cleaner. Now, Magic Wheel Cleaner is great on the wheel faces, specifically for combating iron. So it removes iron and fallout, and what you're going to see when you use this product is you're going to see some purpleization happening on the wheel. That is pulling out the embedded fallout from either your brakes or even your wheel faces. So this is fantastic for your wheels.
Hey guys, Anthony the Rag Company, chiming in to let you know about TRCMA, the Rag Company Media Access Event. This is one of the biggest detailing events of the year, and it's going to be happening from March 31st through April 2nd at the Rag Company YouTube channel. And so we're going to be bringing in some of the biggest detailing brands in the industry under one roof to present all day long to show you some awesome detailing tips, tricks, techniques, as well as showcase new products. And we also happen to be running one of our biggest detailing sales at theragcompany.com. So again, March 30th through April 2nd, don't miss out, mark your calendars, we'll see you then.
So these wheels are not the dirtiest, but one thing to note that I like about wheels is I always start from the outside working in, meaning any of the dirt and contaminants from the rubber, if it comes onto here, I want to be able to clean this properly and not intermix the two. So what I like to do is step 1 on this is I like to rinse. And then I come through with my tire cleaner hit all the outers. And it's okay if you get overspray on the fenders as well, fender liners specifically. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our tire brush. I do a couple spritz in the tire brush. That way when I do agitation, it's going to foam a little bit. So what you're seeing right now, just having sprayed tire cleaner, is you're seeing that the foam is actually turning brown. That is blooming. So it is pulling all of the dirt and grime that's embedded in this rubber surface, and it is cleaning it. And by adding the brush for agitation purposes, it's gonna pull even more. So here we go. So I always start, and I typically go counterclockwise. It works best for me. Might be different for you, and that's okay. So I let that sit for a couple seconds, dunk my brush, and then I do a quick rinse. And already we can see that the tires now are looking fresher. They're looking a lot more black, and that's a good sign. So now I'm gonna move into the wheel area, and I'm actually going to start and then spray. Again, I like to go counterclockwise. So I hit the face here, and I'm going to even spray the inner where the brakes are. What we're going to see is we're gonna see it starting to purplize a little bit. That is pulling the fallout out of especially your brake area, your caliper, and all of that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my barrel brush, and I'm going to gently bring it in here and agitate. I typically go between two different spokes, and I rotate as much as possible. I dunk, and then I come back, and then like I said, I'll do two different spokes. As I go from spoke to spoke, I'm rotating, and you want to do this because you want to make sure that your brush is as clean as possible, so you're not pushing any embedded contaminants back into the paint surfaces. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tri-grip brush, I'm going to put a little bit of magic wheel cleaner on the tip of it, and I'm going to get into this area that would otherwise be lug nuts, and I'm going to lightly agitate. I'm even going to get areas like behind around the spoke. And the other areas I like to focus on are on these corners of each spoke, because oftentimes those pick up the most grime and they hold the most grime. And now the final step of this whole process, the mitt. I'm gonna spray a little bit into the mitt, and now I'm working on the face, going from spoke to spoke. And I always keep track of where I started. So I know I said I go counterclockwise. I went clockwise that time, but I knew I started on this spoke. I just like to keep track of that. That way I know I'm not missing anything. Oftentimes I'll hit the wheel face one more time. If you can reach the back of your spoke like I can on this car, do that. Get the back of the spokes, get every angle you possibly can, because you want to make sure that your wheels are as clean as possible. Okay? So now that that is all said and done, we can now rinse our wheels and tires. Now, one thing to note, we do the wheels and tires first because this is the dirtiest part of the wash process. And oftentimes you get a lot of overspray. So it's best to get your overspray out of the way on a dirty paint surface rather than a clean car. So with that said, we are gonna do the other three tires, and then we're gonna move on to step two. So now what we've got is an all-purpose cleaner, or APC. And what we're gonna do here is, while the paint is still dry, we are going to actually spritz from a body line about midway from the door down. The focal point is getting all the dirt and grime on the lower rockers out. You can even, if you wanted to hit your tires and wheels one more time with this, you can also do that, as this is a great product for wheels and tires as well. But for this instance, what I like to do is I like to pick a point of the vehicle and I work my way around, and then that's where I finish. So in this instance, we're gonna start on this front fender right here, and I'm gonna work my way down the passenger side to the rear, and then up the driver's side before finishing on the front bumper. So let's get started. And as I spray this in the next step, when we go into the wash, you're actually going to see where this APC was sprayed, because you'll see a clear line in the soap when it does its dwell method. Now, one thing you'll note is right here, this is why we do this. It's going to pull all of this contaminants off the surface. This step is arguably the most important step of this process. And the reason why this is the most important step of the process is when you go to do a contact wash, meaning you take your wash mitt and you put it on the paint surface with soap, you want to make sure that all this dirt and grime is no longer on that surface, because you don't want to push this dirt and grime into the paint. That's what causes micro marring and scratching. So this is really, really important that you take this step seriously and you make sure that you pre-treat your panels prior to the wash process. Is this necessary for every single wash? No. I would say maybe in the winter months, yes, ideally. In the summer months, not particularly. It's best judgment. If you see particulates on the paint surface, then that's a point where you need to do it. But the other thing too that you want to make sure in any part of this wash process, make sure that your paint surfaces are cool to the touch, as well as make sure that you're doing this in shade, in a shaded area if you are doing your wash process outside. You do not want to let your chemicals dry on the paint. Making sure we get the grill. We are back to where we started, which was this front fender. So that concludes this process of the spraying. We're going to let it sit and dwell just for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to go into the rinse. One thing I forgot to mention that we want to make sure we do, don't forget the gas caps, as well as your door jambs. Now, we checked the door jambs. They're not super dirty. I'm not going to go in depth on that, but the little details matter in the wash process. So just make sure you don't miss these areas that you otherwise would overlook. So now we rinse, same thing, start on the front fender and follow your tracks. But the awesome thing about doing an all-purpose cleaner on the paint surface as your pre-rinse, it makes the rinsing so easy. Check this out. Literally falls right off. Oftentimes when you don't rinse, you're fighting getting the contamination off the surface, like right here, in fact. So here's a great example. This whole area came off super easy, but right here, I actually could have done a little better as far as putting the all-purpose cleaner onto the surface, because what's happening is, even though I'm spraying it, there's still contaminants on the surface. So that's why making sure you get good coverage is key, as well as dwell time. Not excessive dwell time. I'm talking 2 minutes at most of dwell time. We just made it around the car. All of the all-purpose cleaner is now rinsed off. What I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go and I'm actually gonna rinse the entire vehicle off one last time before moving to our next step. But one thing to note is the all-purpose cleaner did a fantastic job. It took off the vast majority of dirt. I would say at least 80%. Now for the 20% of the dirt that's still on the paint surface, that is gonna be taken care of through our next step via a mechanical wash. So it is okay if there's still a little bit on the paint surface. It's nothing to worry about. We're gonna take care of that on the next step. Step 3, we get to foam. This is arguably the funnest step, but it can also be kind of a confusing step because we need to make sure that the dilution ratio is right in our foam cannon. Now, when it comes to the bucket, to be quite honest, I do a couple of Ugga-Dugs when I put my soap into the bucket. I just put a little bit in there. Pretty happy with that. And then when it comes to the foam cannon, I want to dilute this properly. Typically, when it comes to GSF, to get the nice, sudsy, thick foam, I do a dilution of 10:1. Now, how to do my dilution? We have 1,000 mils in this foam cannon. So what we are going to do is put 10 parts per water and 1 part per soap. That's 11 total parts. And then I divide 1,000 by 11, and that gives me approximately 90 mils of soap that I need to put in the foam cannon to have my 10:1 dilution. So I actually have a little dilution cup, and I fill this up to 90 mils. Now this is something that is important. One, you want to have a good wash experience, so you want to have that nice suds factor. But the other thing too is you don't want to waste product, so that's why doing a proper dilution is going to be key, because it's going to make your soap last a long time. So we're going to put this into the foam cannon here. Put our lid on and then just shake. this is ready to go. So for our wash process, we are going to use the Ultra Cyclone Wash Pad. You can get this both in the pad and a mitt, but what's fantastic about this is not only is it safe on all surfaces, but its microfiber pores actually pull dirt and contamination off the surface of your paint. But the other key thing to note about this is I don't have multiple buckets. I'm using one bucket, and there's a reason for this. Inside this bucket, I have what's called a Detail Factory clean screen. Now this sits on the bottom of my bucket, and what is great about this is when I dunk my mitt into the bucket and I squeeze it, what it's going to do are all the contaminants that come off the mitt, they're going to sink to the bottom of the bucket. But what happens is this actually traps all dirt and contamination down here. So every time I dunk, all of the dirt stays down here and it doesn't go above the clean screen. Without further ado, guys, let's get started on the foam. So with the vehicle having been rinsed off, we can now foam on the soap. But one thing to note, wherever you start, go all the way around and finish where you started. That's always the key premise when it comes to both rinsing, foaming, as well as even doing the contact wash. When you get the dilutions correct, such as our 10-to-1 dilution, this is what your soap is going to look like. Very thick. It's very, very thick. So perfect dilution, and we didn't use a lot of product. But the other thing to note, I always like to go from the top and work my way down. Again, it's just preference, but that's my go-to process. Something I really want to point out in this process, you'll remember on our previous step, we did the APC on the lower rockers to combat any of the heavy dirt and contaminants. Well, you can see where that line is right here specifically, where the soap is clinging onto the areas where we didn't apply the APC. That tells me that the process of putting on an all-purpose cleaner on your lower rockers really works, and it works well. So that's why that step is very important in this process. Same thing, I always start from top, working my way down to the bottom. One thing I do like to save is I like to save the bottom rockers last. But the other thing too is every single panel or half a panel, like this door is pretty large, I will flip my mitt. So flip your mitt frequently and dunk it, and I'll explain as I go. So for instance, I'm gonna start right here on the door, working my way from top to bottom. Then I flip my mitt and I move on, leaving the lower rocker areas for last. And as I transition to every panel, even glass areas, I flip the pad. Once both sides have been used, that's when I do a dunk, give it a couple squeezes, and then I move on. Jumping to the other side, making sure we get the high spots first, and we'll go to the hood, same thing, not putting a lot of pressure. And one thing, again, this is preference. I love the pad because the pad, even as I apply pressure, it's so dense that my pressure of my hand is evenly distributed throughout the pad. So we now did everything up top. We're now going to transition over to the lowers now that we've given the lower areas some time to dwell. I am now flipping my pad more frequently to ensure that the wash process is even safer, given that these were the areas that were the most contaminated with dirt. So you probably remember this brush from the first step where we used this on the wheel faces. This brush is also safe on your paint surfaces, and it works fantastic for these honeycomb grills. But the thing to note is use it, but make sure you rinse it. So in this instance, we rinsed this brush, we dunked it in our soap, and now we can use this to gently get around, especially these crevices over time. And if you have a white vehicle, you'll know what I mean when you see browning and just dirt and contamination between the emblem and the paint. That's where this brush really excels. But the other area that it really excels in is these honeycomb grills. Just a little bit of light agitation, you're able to get a lot of the dirt and grime and even bugs out of the honeycomb areas of this car. So now that we have done our mechanical wash utilizing our Ultra Wash Mitt, we can now go to the rinse process. One thing to note, to make your wash process efficient, work from the top down. It makes it super easy so you're not chasing soap in different nooks and crannies. You want to let it come from the top and work its way down. That way the car is clean and it's ready to go for the next step. So now the rinse process is complete. There is no soap on the surface, but one thing that I noticed during the rinse process is there were certain parts that were kind of hydrophobic, meaning they were beading a little bit, and there were parts where the water had no water behavior at all. For instance, this hood. If you notice, when I spray the surface, it sheets, meaning it looks like one flat sheet of water. There's really not a lot of beading happening. The beading happens when there's some sort of protection on the surface. What this tells us is that this vehicle's paint has no protection on the surface. So we're gonna change that. We're gonna use Armor Detail Supply beads. Now this is a fantastic product. So basically, after you're done washing the car and the car has been rinsed off, but it is still wet, we are going to spray this on the surface, and then we're gonna let it sit for a couple of seconds, and then we're gonna rinse it off again. This is gonna give it added protection and hydrophobics to the paint surface. To demonstrate that, I'm gonna do a 50-50 on this front hood so you guys can actually see beads in action. What you're gonna do is you're gonna spray the vehicle's surface, and I typically do 3 to 4 per panel. I may have done a little bit more on the hood because the hood is a larger panel, but typically 3 to 4 is your average per panel on the vehicle. We're letting it sit for a little bit. Again, we're in a controlled environment. If you were to do this outside, please do so under shade, and ideally while your paint surface is cool. So here we go. I'm gonna spray it off, and what you're gonna notice, added hydrophobics. In fact, if you come over here, you can see a distinct difference. So here we go. Left is beads, right is after we washed. So this is an important fourth step because what this allows for is 2 things. One, it makes the drying process much, much simpler. You are able to get water to basically fall off the paint versus water that is clinging to the paint surface. This allows for added hydrophobics for water to come off easy. The second part is it actually adds protection and makes your future wash process easier. It's not going to keep your car from getting dirty, but what it will do is it's going to make the wash process easier. So all that dirt and contamination that we were fighting with earlier is going to come right off the paint surface. What we're going to do, like all of our other steps, is we're going to start on one side. So we just started on the hood, and we're gonna work our way all the way around, finishing on this side of the hood. Now, if you're in a controlled environment like we are, you can basically spray the car, go all the way around, come back, and then rinse the car. If you're outside, you're going to want to spray and rinse per panel. So we're going to demonstrate a spray and rinse process as if we were doing this outside. Again, 2 to 3 sprays per panel, then rinse. Keep in mind, we want to continue the process of working from the top down because we don't want to be rinsing this off continuously. Now that we have applied beads, check out the hydrophobics of this car. This is the fun part. Check this out. Easy. So we are using the Gauntlet by the Rag Company. This is our arguably best drying towels. Personally, this is my favorite towel. With the right chemicals and the right drying towel, this wash process is next to none. It makes it so enjoyable actually washing this car because we're seeing very, very clean results, but we're also not dealing with water clinging to the surfaces, which is definitely a good sign. This is friggin' awesome. You can't beat that. Not even having to put pressure on the paint surface and this car is dry. Crazy. That concludes the final step of this wash process. And as you can see, this car looks absolutely fantastic. Now, one bonus step that we didn't cover in this wash process is putting dressing on the tires. If you notice that your tires could use a little bit of pop still, even after the wash process, my suggestion is do that as your final step of the wash process. The awesome thing about this wash process is this wash process can be used on a brand new car, it can be used on a pre-owned car, and it can even be used on a classic car. Regardless of what car you're utilizing this wash process on, it will give you the same results that we achieved today. For your convenience, we've attached all the links to every product that we've used into the description of this video. So if you want to follow this step-by-step process, you can do so at home and you'll get the same results that we did today. If you have any questions or comments, definitely put them down below, as myself and Jimmy will be working behind the scenes to answer your questions as they come in. And if you like this video, guys, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. And for more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you get notified when we have another video drop. And as always, guys, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more videos right here at the Rag Company YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.